The old shepherd rubbed his palms together from the cold, and in the meantime, he wrapped his old knitted torso around himself and said that I should return the sheep to the village as soon as possible before the snow fell more. The cold wind, along with small and large snow grains, slowly descended on the hills and very high mountains. It was twilight, and the darkness prevailed over the dim light of the sky. A small herd of sheep was grazing on dry and sometimes green and fresh grass that was left on the pasture ground from the hot season. A thin shepherd wearing an old and tattered suit was leaning on his stick and staring at the horizon. A dog with a stout and elongated body, with an old leather collar hanging on its neck, was barking and running from side to side following the sheep. The man raised and lowered his stick and called the sheep with his loud voice. His chest was burning badly, and he coughed violently for a moment. The cold wind was blowing with snowflakes in the air as if announcing heavy snowfall. The barking of the herd guard dog, which excitedly ran to and fro among the sheep, did not stop for a moment. Now all the light of the day was caught in the darkness of the night, and nothing could be seen from the surrounding mountains and hills except a dark shadow with a towering and scary figure. The cold and wet grains of snow fell on the face and hands of the old shepherd riding a strong wind, creating a dumb and unknown feeling. The shepherd thought to himself again, "I have to hurry and go back to the village. The distance from the village to here is very long. Tonight, if I don't get caught in this pass, I will be very lucky." Then he swallowed hard. His chest was burning badly, and he was coughing. The knitted woolen bodice that she wore over several other shirts looked very old and shabby. However, these old clothes were able to protect him from the cold. The man knew that if he did not bring the flock of sheep to the village quickly, the cold could cause many losses among the sheep. He should have found a solution to this problem. The sound of the wind did not stop for a moment, and the sound of the bells of the sheep jumping over the rocks and stones towards the hillside could also be heard. The weather was getting colder, and the snowfall was expected to be more intense. The shepherd was surprised, even though he had spent many years with the sheep on the slopes of the mountains and hills, and had learned a lot about the mountain climate there. His feet and fingers were numb, and the thick woolen cloth he wrapped around his legs was also wet from the snow. He thought that if I had returned a little earlier today, maybe I wouldn't have faced this situation, but it's a pity that nothing can be done. The sound of sheep's feet and dogs barking brought him out of his thoughts. Thick darkness was everywhere, and it was difficult to see the way down the hill. The sheep continued to move faster, and the barking of the guard dog named Shirak could be heard among the herd of sheep. The man shouted to the Shirak, "Take care that the sheep do not go near the edge of the abyss." He also twirled his stick in the air several times. The howling sound of the wind prevented any other sound from being heard. The snowfall continued, and the snow had covered all the hills and mountains in white. The shepherd ran with all his strength towards the edge of the abyss, which now looked like a huge and dark opening in the darkness of the air, and he could hear his footsteps on the thick layer of snow. At the same time, he waved his stick in the air and moved the sheep to the other side of the hill. Snowflakes were swirling in the air with the wind and creating an eerie sight in the darkness of the light. The old man's voice was lost in the howl of the wind, and the cold penetrated deep into his bones. He thought, "I wish he was somewhere warm and drank hot tea and rested a little," a thought that makes him feel good. The barking of the dog did not stop for a moment, while the sheep ran down the hill, wet from water and snow. The old shepherd thought that maybe people from his village would come after him and his sheep, but this thought did not last more than a few moments, because he knew that the people of the village did not dare to come to the mountain in this weather condition. He remembered, a few years ago, a resident of a nearby village was lost in the mountains in the winter, and no one went looking for him. Sometime later, his frozen body was found by some villagers. Negative and hopeless thoughts invaded his mind and brain. You could hear the bells of the sheep and the barking of the guard dog, who were running in all directions due to the cold and strong wind. The man's legs were completely numb due to the cold and humidity of the water, and he felt the weight of his legs more and more every moment until he lost the ability to move his legs. The snowfall increased every moment, and the ground was covered with ice and snow. The dog barking was not heard for a few moments. It was as if time had stopped for a few minutes. In the corner of the hills, a piece of land could be seen without snow cover. It seemed that that part of the land was placed under a rock that prevented the snow from settling there. The man muttered to himself, perhaps it would be better to take the sheep that way to stop the snow falling. It seemed like a good shelter. But a few moments later, he laughed at this thought. Big pieces of snow slowly settled on his hands and face, and the cold wind burned his cheeks. The woolen and knitted bodice that she wore over her clothes was wet and full of snow. The fear of death had gradually cast a shadow on his brain and mind like an ominous and dark shadow. He felt that the intensity of the wind had decreased a little, but the heavy snowfall continued, and this caused him to panic. Now the man could no longer hear the sound of the bell and the barking of the herd dog. He said to himself that maybe the sheep and the herding dog had gone away from him. His legs could not move, and he was completely stuck on the ground. He opened the long shawl that was tied around his waist and covered his head and face tightly. He also tied the ends of the shawl together. He gathered all his energy in his legs and tried to stand up, but his efforts to stand up were futile. His legs were completely limp. The eyes of the man were completely open, and the darkness together with the whiteness of the earth had become incomprehensible to him. Without a doubt, he saw the feelings of life in his being completely extinguished. However, he struggled to remove his frozen hands, which he had buried inside his old, tattered jacket. He took his stick from the ground and tried to get up from the ground with its help. The young man's physical strength was depleting at an incredible rate. Maybe this was his last attempt to survive and continue his life in the face of death. He thought that not much time had passed since the beginning of snow in that part of the mountain, but the layer of snow on which he was walking with difficulty had reached his knees. The azure sky was covered with large pieces of puffy clouds hanging in the air. The moon was illuminating the mountains and hills covered with snow with its pale rays from behind the clouds. Where the old shepherd was present, a little beyond, all the sheep were lying half dead under a thick layer of snow. The herd dog was standing on a rock and dragging his cold and frozen body. The snow continued. It was late at night. The shepherd thought that the sheep might be sleeping because of the cold. He went to one of them and brushed away a thick layer of snow from his wet and frozen wool. The animal's half-open eyes were fixed on the shepherd's disappointed face. The heat of the sheep's breath was coming out of his nose and mouth like a small heater in the cold air. His breaths were numbered and the dry sound coming out of the animal's throat. After a few minutes, the old shepherd felt that for a moment, a dark and terrifying shadow passed over his body. Dear friends, this story is based on reality. Years ago, before this big park was built in the country of Iran and the city of Mashhad, many unfortunate events happened to the people of this region. This is part of the story, and in the next video, we are going to tell you the continuation of it. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to our channel for more videos. In the following videos, by traveling to different regions, we are trying to tell you very old and strange stories that happened based on reality and have been narrated from past generations until now. So we suggest you subscribe to this channel so you don't miss our next videos. If If you have been with us until this part of the video, write in the comments section what do you think will happen to the old shepherd next.
Babacığım, bir yapın sana. İyice. Garfield, yıl boyu.